3-1 heading into the Big Ten schedule. We're getting you ready for the Illinois-Nebraska matchup as Inside the Illini Big Ten football starts now.
Inside the Illini Big Ten college football is brought to you by Illini HQ, the News Gazette, News Talk 1400 WDWS and WAND.
The non-conference season is over. That means no more tough tests against the likes of Youngstown State, Texas State, Western Kentucky. Illinois gets a breather and gets in a Big Ten play. I say that a little tongue-in-cheek with the way things have been going in the Big Ten, but 3-1. We were here last year in this exact same position talking about a 3-1 Illinois team going into Nebraska for Big Ten play. Do you feel any better about this team this year, Steve?
That's a good question, Matt. I'm not sure the answer to that. I'd say maybe. I think the offense is better this year. The defense is still a little suspect, but what a tough way to start the Big Ten, having to go to Lincoln for a second straight year.
Right. Matt, what do you think? Feel better about 2014?
A little bit. Having Wes Lunt there helps out quite a bit in that regard. The defense is still struggling, and the less than convincing wins they've had in non-conference play haven't really, lifted the confidence too much. But I'd say it's a little better than last year.
That is a very lukewarm assessment of what you see in this 2014 team. And speaking of assessments, at the beginning of the year, we were trying to count out, are there 6 wins in this schedule? Now, 3-1 was pretty much what we had expected in terms of record. Let's talk about the possibility of a bowl game. Illinois would need to go 3-5 to become bowl eligible. Are there 3 wins for this team on the rest of the schedule?
There are 3 potential wins on the rest of the schedule.
This is the lukewarm segment.
It really is. It's hard to be anything but that at this particular point in time. But you've got Purdue next week at Memorial Stadium, Minnesota game there. The road games are really going to be tough for them to be competitive in and to win, certainly. And so the roundabout way is I don't know if there's 3 more wins on that. What do you think?
I think there are. I've said all along this season they're going to go 6-6 and get to a bowl game. I'm not going to change that course right now. They did what they needed to do in non-conference play by finishing 3-1, and it doesn't matter at the end of the year how those wins came about and how they weren't blowout wins by any means in those 3 victories. But I think there are 3 wins. The Purdue game at home is one. I feel the Minnesota game for homecoming is kind of really critical, and then one of the games at home in November, either Iowa or Penn State. I think both those teams are beatable and haven't shown that they're the elite of the Big Ten yet.
And I think there are plenty of positives to take from the first part of the season. Things they weren't doing last year, creating a few more turnovers, getting to the quarterback a little bit better. I know they've been going up against Texas State's line and Youngstown State's line, but they weren't able to do that as well against those kinds of teams last year. So I like those positives we're seeing so far this season. And like you said, Purdue is one of those winnable games. Illinois comes back home in a week and plays that game, so they could be 4-2 even with a loss today. That would be a promising sign. Well, the game we just saw was a blur. Do you guys even remember it?
No.
2-hour lightning delay adding to the strangeness. Not as strange. Illinois trailing in the 4th quarter. We'll look back at the Texas State game, lightning delay, and all next.
Inside the Illini Big Ten college football is brought to you by Illini HQ, the News Gazette, News Talk 1400 WDWS and WAND.
Credit to our great meteorologists here at WAND. They warned us to prepare for some weather midway through the Illinois-Texas State game. A long delay, though, may have been just what Illinois needed as we take you back to Memorial Stadium for the battle between the Illini and the Bobcats. This was a difficult one to handicap. Texas State sure looked good against Arkansas Pine Bluff, whatever that meant. Then they looked pedestrian against Navy. Again, hard to draw a conclusion from that. But the notoriously slow-starting Illini gave us hope that it was Big Ten versus Sun Belt the way it's supposed to be. On the first play from scrimmage, the pass went laterally to Josh Ferguson, and thanks to a couple of key blocks, Ferguson was gone. A 75-yard rushing touchdown, and after a missed PAT, Illinois was up 6-0, and we were only 13 seconds into it.
Pretty surreal, happened so quick. Got a great block from a freshman, and I applaud him for that.
Despite the quick score, however, the term slow start still applied. After the 75-yard burst, the Illini confused us all by only gaining 13 total yards on their next 4 possessions, each resulting in 3 and outs, each resulting in punts.
In the very beginning, we we're missing signals. You know, we're not running the correct routes. Or, you know, the depth of the routes are not very good.
Texas State's offensive drives were resulting in points. They already had a 7-6 lead when Bobcat QB Tyler Jones hit Japhus Gaines. Texas State led 14-6. And that's when the storm came in. The first strike of lightning less than 2 minutes into the second quarter. Teams retreated to their locker rooms and fans to the concourses.
We turned on the TVs, let them watch some football games.
I should have taken a nap in here. You know, it was, you know, I've been through one of these before, and it's a big advantage when you're home.
We try to utilize it as a, you know, hey, this is a halftime break, let's go.
Out of the 2-hour delay, Texas State was on the board again. Tyler Jones keeping it for a rushing touchdown. It was 21-6 after that 90-yard drive. Down 15 with a hair more than 2 minutes left in the half, Illinois had their first sustained drive. Oh, it only took 5 plays, but it covered a quick 75 yards, with Ferguson getting his second touchdown on a career day. Illinois got within 8 at the half.
Josh and DY are pretty slippery, so they can you know, make a big play out of just a check down.
Illinois came out of it ready to play, and who else but Josh Ferguson leading the charge. The screen and the speedster did the rest, breaking ankles on his way to the 33-yard score. Illinois within 2. A few minutes later, a first and goal at the Texas State 3. The handoff to Donovan Young, and with some help from his friends, he gets into the end zone. The Illini took a 4-point lead. And just when they seemed poised to start putting it away, a mistake. Wes Lunt overthrows Mikey Dudek right into the chest of Colby Targan. The interception nearly returned for a touchdown. The Bobcat offense, though, would finish that off. And for the 4th game in a row, Illinois trailed in the 4th quarter. But the late efficiency of Wes Lunt just continued. The QB was 7 of 10 for 61 yards, and this touchdown to Mikey Dudek in the 4th. And it was the defense that delivered the final blow. The Jones passing attempt tipped and corralled by D'Angelo Bentley, officially a 45-yard interception return, ending in a touchdown. Illinois was out in front for good. More of a battle than they would have liked, but a 42-35 win nonetheless.
You know, I'm still kind of in shock, you know, that that game, when it happened like it happened. You know, I'm excited, but, you know, definitely not the way we wanted it to happen.
Of course, it wasn't pretty, you know, and I'm getting a lot of gray hair with some of these games, but, you know, it is a W.
We're planning on 1 W a week on this show, at least.
Well, he'd be happy with that, wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I liked from the game, we'll start with the balance offensively. The running game got going after I ran stories. I'm sure you guys talked about it all week last week, how averaging just about 71 yards a game. How did they get the running game going?
Well, I think the offensive line was a little better than it has been. Again, I think it's a competition level that helped there. But it was good to see Ferguson with the 190 yards, although he left a couple of yards on the field there, that one of his late runs when he looked like he was going in for a score and went down. But that was good to see that. And he's going into a Nebraska game where he had a good game last year, so maybe it's time to build on that.
Yeah, he did have a good game last year in Nebraska, just running the ball and also catching the ball at 8 catches for 82 yards last year out in Lincoln. And like you said, he kind of cramped up on that late run last Saturday against Texas State. And Bill Cubitt, the Illinois offensive coordinator, kind of joked with him coming off the sidelines, you know, did you get that piano lifted off your back at all? Is that why you had to go down? But he seems to be kind of rounding into form, and that's crucial for Illinois. I know they want to establish the pass to set up the run, but to be able to be balanced like they were against Texas State should bode well for Big Ten play.
I want to talk a little bit about these slow starts, because it was great to see that first play from scrimmage, that 75-yard touchdown, but I think it was Justin Hardy who had the block on the inside. He doesn't hold that block, they don't get that play, and Illinois probably punts on their first 6 possessions. I kind of got some insight from Wes Lunt. I said, you know, what is it? Is it game plan? Is it execution? He talked about the plays being scripted early in the game, and I know Coach Beckman has worked that way. Do you think there's a problem in that? It seems the script is a little too conservative early on.
I don't know if there's necessarily a problem. I think with the the offense the way it is, they depend so much on timing routes with the wide receivers, and with such a young wide receiving core. I mean, you had 2 true freshmen starting against Texas State, and Malik Turner and Mikey Dudek, because Geronimo Allison was out for the game. So I think it just kind of comes down to precision with that, and it's not like they're in high school anymore and just go run a 20-yard post pattern or, you know, a 15-yard sideline route. That they need to, you know, read what the defense is doing and kind of react from that, because that's what pretty much Illinois' offense is predicated on, is just kind of seeing what the defense lines up in and then going from there. And I think that has to do with some of the struggles early on.
They're obviously adapting in game, though, Steve.
Yeah, that was one of the games that was a fast start that turned back into a slow start.
Right.
It was as kind of the way you described it. But maybe they ought to come out and get the mentality that, hey, this is the fourth quarter. Okay, we've got these plays scripted, but let's deviate if we need to, and, you know, based on what we see, and go that way. I don't know what the answer is, but the slow starts will not work in the Big Ten.
Right. They can't afford to get behind 19-5, 23-5, whatever the score was at Nebraska last year. Of course, Illinois has had 5 points at a couple different occasions the last couple years. That's interesting how that happens. Well, I did mention they faced fourth quarter deficits each time. They are 3-1. You used the word level of competition when we were talking about the running game earlier. But Coach Beckman looks at this positively. We're a team that can come back in the fourth. Where do you balance that, the positivity and the reality of who they're playing?
I think that he has to look at that as a positive.
Right.
He's got to go glass half full on that. I go back to my statement that won't work in the Big Ten. It just will not, especially in the Big Ten on the road. If they fall behind, they were behind Nebraska last year 14-0 right out of the gate. As you mentioned, it was 21-5, I think, at one point. And so I think there's some balance there, but you can't keep living and dying in the fourth quarter now.
Yeah, and Lunt keeps talking about the sense of urgency they have in the fourth quarter. That's when they kind of realize, okay, we need to pick it up, and we can't lose to Texas State.
Right.
Let's get it going. And the game against Texas State was very similar, I feel, to the Western Kentucky game, 3 weeks ago, just with the way they fell down, and then they scored right before halftime to kind of get it more manageable. And then you just kind of had a feeling that it would be kind of a close game in the third quarter, and then Illinois would pull away in the fourth, and that's what happened.
Well, we'll see how they respond. We get that answer to your question, Steve. How is that going to take in Big Ten play? We'll get that answer today. Well, the Big Ten was nearly undefeated last week. In fact, the week included a road upset of a ranked SEC team. We'll start with the West. Coming through with an unblemished Week 4 record next on Inside the Illini, Big Ten football. The Inside the Illini Weekly MVP brought to you by Menards, recognizing the top Illinois performer from the previous week. And it was Josh Ferguson having a career day for the Illini. It started with a 75-yard rushing score. Ferguson finished with 190 on just 14 carries and 2 rushing touchdowns. His 190 were the most by an Illinois back since Mikel Leshore's 330 at Wrigley Field in 2010. Throw in 4 catches for 43 yards and a receiving score. Ferguson finished with 233 all-purpose yards and 3 total touchdowns. Well, Illinois' win over Texas State was part of a perfect week for the Big Ten's West Division. Well, there were some escapes, but also blowouts. WAND's Eric Harold takes us through the week in highlights.
In the West, number 19, Wisconsin hosting Bowling Green. Bowling Green coming off of last week's win over Indiana, looking for a second straight Big Ten win. And they would keep it close early as Fred Coppin goes up the middle. No one touches him right through the defense and into the end zone, ties the game at 7 early. But Wisconsin would go absolutely nuts in this game as Melvin Gordon breaks up the middle, runs it. 644 rushing yards, a Big Ten record for Wisconsin as they blow out Bowling Green 68-17. Number 24, Nebraska hosting Miami. They would trail 7-0 early on until Tommy Armstrong goes down the middle to a wide open Kenny Bell. Bell takes it in, ties the game at 7. Later, they would get more from their stud running back, Amir Abdullah. Cuts up and breaks the plane for the touchdown. Nebraska wins over Miami 41-31. Iowa taking on unbeaten Pitt. Jake Rudock looks down the field to Henry Krieger. The big tight end scores that ties the game at 7. Later, they would have to complete a comeback. Mark Weissman at the goal line takes it and breaks through, gives Iowa their first lead of the game, 24-20, and that would be your final as they hand Pittsburgh their first loss of the year. Northwestern looking for their first win of the year against Western Illinois. This would help as Solomon Vaught takes it in for the touchdown. 7-0. Northwestern would never trail in this game. They take out the Leathernecks 24-7. In other games, Purdue, the Boilermakers, take out Southern Illinois 35-13, and the Golden Gophers of Minnesota take out San Jose State 24-7. And now we return to the Inside the Illini crew.
Well, we talk about Nebraska coming up here at length, so we'll go ahead and skip them for the purposes of this segment. Let's start with Wisconsin. We know they're a running team. They broke some records with their 644-yard effort. Wisconsin just kind of doing what they do.
Melvin Gordon went for about half of that,
Right.
253. He and Abdullah, who we'll talk about more a little bit later on, are separating themselves among Big Ten running backs, aren't they?
They are, and I'm off the Dino Babers bandwagon this week. The former Eastern Illinois coach took it on the chin when Bowling Green lost badly to Wisconsin, but Wisconsin did what Wisconsin does, and that's run the ball effectively.
Tanner McAvoy still starting, passing-wise. He kind of makes you a little lukewarm, as a term we've used. Passing still an issue there, or do you think they just rely so heavily on him?
It's not an issue when you can run the ball like they can. They don't even have to throw the ball really when they're running that well, and McAvoy gives them that option in the run game as well, so it's not too much of a concern, I don't think.
Stat of the week for me, though, Minnesota, in their game, Chris Streveler goes 1 for 7 for 7 passing yards in a win over San Jose State. Did you guys catch any of that game?
We were bogged down in the wonderful lightning delay.
Right.
So I know they got a delay up in Minneapolis as well, but that just goes to show you that Jerry Kill can get it done with a quarterback who isn't the most effective throwing the ball. They rely on the run game not almost as heavily as Wisconsin, I'd say, and they're able to manage a win against San Jose State last week.
I didn't see the game obviously either, but I saw the stats and 1 pass completion, and you were going, how does that even happen? Don't you accidentally complete 2 or 3?
I would think so.
Not when you don't throw very many.
And they ran the ball pretty well. Streveler had 161 yards himself. David Cobb had over 200 yards rushing. Northwestern got their first win of the season over Western Illinois. Purdue beat Southern Illinois 35-13. Those teams doing anything to surprise you yet, or is it they're kind of the bottom of the barrel?
It's kind of wait and see. I'm curious to see how Purdue does today against Iowa. I think that's a chance to see if Darrell Hazel's got the program kind of going back in the direction that they had when Joe Tiller was there. But they won. They need to do what they need to do against FCS opponents.
If Matt's prediction is going to come true on 6 wins, those are 2 teams that they're going to have to come from for Illinois, I think.
Right. They'll have to get that Northwestern one on the road. They were close at home last year, but you're right. They'll need one of those. Well, someone here correctly predicted the outcome of the Utah-Michigan game. But I think picking against the Big Ten is a good bet so far. Now we're full court press on this question. Is Brady Hoke on the hot seat? I guess the question is, how hot is that seat? We'll get a look at the highlights and have our own discussion on the topic next. It's time for the Inside the Illini Play of the Week, brought to you by the Decatur Athletic Club. And not only was it a great play, it came at a crucial time. In a one-score game with Texas State driving, D'Angelo Bentley's tip and interception return for a touchdown really put the game away for good. After going 2 years without a pick six, Illinois was celebrating their second in 3 weeks. Well, we're beating a dead horse with the Big Ten image discussion, as is everyone, but we seem to get more evidence each week. Last Saturday, Ann Arbor was the scene of the crime. We go back to Eric Harold for the highlights.
In the East, we have number 11 Michigan State staying in state for a matchup against Eastern Michigan. They would score early and often as Jeremy Langford gets down the right side, breaks a last tackle. I think he broke his ankles. 21 yards for the touchdown. More as Connor Cook, play fake, goes down the middle of the field to Tony Lippett. Gives them another score. Michigan State blows out Eastern Michigan 73-14. Upset alert in the fourth quarter as Indiana at the goal line against number 18 Missouri, and D'Angelo Roberts smashed in to give them a late lead with under 30 seconds left. Mizzou, their last chance, they throw down the middle of the field and it is shut down. Hoosiers come out with the upset over Missouri 31-27. Plenty of offense in the Maryland-Syracuse matchup as C.J. Brown goes to Marcus Leak down the sideline. More from Maryland as Brandon Moss takes a screen pass to the house. Gave them a double-digit lead, and Maryland takes out Syracuse 34-20. Michigan looking for a bounce-back win over Utah, but their only touchdown of the day came from one of the big guys. Willie Henry, the defensive tackle, picks it off, takes it into the end zone, but they would not score again. Michigan falls to Utah 26-10. Penn State taking on UMass, and this would be a beatdown. Backup quarterback DJ Crook in the game late. Play action, throws to Brent Wilkerson for the touchdown, caps off a big win for the Nittany Lions as they win 48-7 over UMass. And Rutgers ran all over Navy last week as Paul James breaks one tackle, breaks two on his way to a 38-yard touchdown, 284 rushing yards on the day for Rutgers. They take out Navy 31-24. Not in action last week, the Buckeyes of Ohio State, they get back to it today against Cincinnati. And now we return to the Inside the Illini crew.
Well, it's only fair that we start with the one undefeated team left in the Big Ten East, Penn State, taking care of UMass. I know they're not a big threat, but what do you think of Penn State so far? Are they a team that can keep this thing going, or are they victims of an early season schedule?
I think they can keep it going. Christian Hackenberg has shown he's, along with Wes Lund, one of the premier quarterbacks in the Big Ten. He's not going through a sophomore slump at all after he had an outstanding freshman season. And Deshaun Hamilton, wideout for them, has really kind of filled the void that Allen Robinson created by declaring for the draft early. Like Illinois, they need to see if they can get the run game going a little bit, which will be instrumental in Big Ten play. But by playing Northwestern today, I think that helps them gain some confidence at the start of Big Ten play.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment. I think they keep it going at least through today, playing Northwestern and Happy Valley. That should be another win for them. You
mentioned Hackenberg. I'm curious to have a little more discussion on him. 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions this year. His yardage numbers are good. His accuracy numbers about 60%. You see him maybe take a little bit of a dip so far this season?
Yeah, I mean,
just a small one.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, Matt, with the interception and touchdown ratio that being kind of, even right now. And he put up a bunch of yards in the season opening win against Central Florida over in Ireland, and just hasn't really produced, touchdown passes like he had maybe his freshman year. So that'll be something to watch the rest of the year for Penn State.
Michigan State put up 73 points. They outgained Eastern Michigan 320-1 in the first half. That's another incredible stat coming from the Big Ten last week. We'll go ahead and skip over that one because the Spartans were the Spartans. Let's talk about that Utah-Michigan game. That was one I was actually able to pull up on the laptop in the little work area during the lightning delay against Illinois. And I just saw mistake after mistake by Michigan. What's going on in Ann Arbor?
They got that game down to 7 minutes to go in the game, and then they had a 2.5-hour weather delay. And not many of the 106,000 came back after that one, that's for sure. But you mentioned Brady Hoke. Is he on the hot seat? I'd say the seat is very warm. They're just 4-12, 4-8 in the last 12 games under him. So I don't know what's going on, but it's not very good.
Matt, does Hoke keep his job without wins over Ohio State, Michigan State as the season goes on?
I don't know. I mean, they fired Rich Rodriguez there because he didn't win, and he may go 7-6 like Rich Rod did in his final season there, and he may be out of a job too. I know he's a Michigan man, whatever that exactly means, and how much that plays into consideration up in Ann Arbor. But what they really need to get going is better quarterback play. Devin Gardner's been just so inconsistent throughout these last 2 seasons that it's really affecting Michigan's offense and what they can do. And I'd say Hoke's definitely on the hot seat.
I think it's worth mentioning that Maryland and Rutgers are both 3-1 as they get into Big Ten play here. Rutgers obviously has played a Big Ten game. But the team I want to talk about deserves some recognition after we kind of blasted them last week. Indiana getting that win over Missouri. What do we make of the Hoosiers?
Who knows? Kevin Wilson's offense came alive at a crucial time. A huge win for Indiana, going down to Missouri and beating a team that played in the SEC title game last year and had a lot of pieces back from that team. And very important game for Indiana, I'd say, to keep that momentum going. You can't really show you're just a one-hit wonder by winning at Missouri. If they can string a few wins together in Big Ten play, I mean, the possibility of a bowl game is realistic for Indiana.
A lot of folks have asked me this week, can Illinois go to Nebraska and win? Well, Indiana went to Missouri and won. I suppose anything's possible, but I don't think anybody saw that one coming, even the folks over in the Hoosier State.
Right, Indiana plays, they get to host Maryland. That'll be an interesting, I don't know if it's a measuring stick game, maybe for both of those teams. That'll be an interesting matchup. We'll actually pick that one later in the show. Well, he's a key cog in Illinois' offense. We've talked about him plenty already. As a sophomore, he was already one of the country's most versatile running backs. Now off a huge game, we hear from Josh Ferguson what his production means for this team next.
Inside the Illini, Big Ten College Football.
Well, he's understated in terms of personality. Some would say undersized, but we might just feel like he's underutilized. Illinois running back Josh Ferguson is earning his place as one of the top backs in the Big Ten, and he's still a junior. Noah Newman talks with and about Ferguson in our Player Spotlight, brought to you by Sarah Bush Lincoln Health System.
2013 was a breakout year for Josh Ferguson. He ranked 9th in the Big Ten in all-purpose yards per game, so it's no surprise expectations were higher than ever coming into the season. Unfortunately, going into Week 4, those expectations had not been met. Ferguson failed to rush for more than 52 yards in each of the team's first 3 games. He admits it was frustrating, but last Saturday, the floodgates opened up on the first play from scrimmage. Ferguson broke a 75-yard touchdown, and the junior from Joliet Catholic was on his way to a career day.
Pretty surreal. Happened so quick. Got a great block from freshman, and I applaud him for that. Very grateful for that. But yeah, starting fast with that long run was great.
Ferguson carved up the Texas State defense for a career-high 190 yards, and he only needed 14 carries to do it.
But I was happy that we were able to do that. Going into this week, it was a focus of ours to run. So, for that to happen was awesome.
His pass-catching skills were also on display. The junior hauled in 5 catches for 49 yards and a touchdown. And with an inexperienced receiving core, Ferguson at times is the go-to guy for West Lund.
Josh is a huge spark for our team. Him on the screen just making a play, and then on that long run just busting up the middle. Josh is just such an electric player, and we're lucky to have him.
The Illini know they'll have to run the ball effectively in order to win games in the Big Ten. Coming off a career day, head coach Tim Beckman is confident Ferguson and company will be able to pound the rock tonight in Lincoln, Nebraska.
I look for Josh to feel a little bit of confidence about himself and to come back the next couple weeks and continue to improve.
There's a certain piece about that I have about this team. We're pretty positive about what we can do in the Big Ten. We just got to execute, play good defense, and put some points on the board.
Well, for all the flack the Big Ten gets, one of the things we hear a lot about are the running backs in the league. We talked about Abdullah and Melvin Gordon being kind of the cream of the crop in the Big Ten. Josh Ferguson's right, maybe if there's a next level, he's right at the top of that. Wouldn't you agree?
I think so, and I know it irks him a little bit that he's not mentioned in the same sentence as Gordon and Abdullah, but he hasn't, produced consistently throughout his career. Injuries have hindered him at times, and just his durability as well. He's not a back that, Illinois is going to give the ball to 25 to 30 times a game. I don't know if he can hold up under those conditions, and he is such a vital part of Illinois' passing offense, too, that's why you're not going to see him get that too, because he might get 7 or 8 receptions in a game as well. But he's a special talent, and Illinois wants to give him the ball any way they can on Saturday.
Bo Pelini thinks a lot of Josh Ferguson. I heard some comments this week, and he's got Abdullah that he coaches, so he's got one of the best ones there. But he had good things to say about Josh and the 114 yards he gained against his team last year, and obviously that'll be one of the game plans for them is to try to slow Josh down a little bit.
I kind of asked him. I tried to figure out, because he said, we practiced harder and then we ran the ball better. And I was like, just like that? You flip a switch? How was he able to kind of turn it on in this last game?
I think that first play really helped when he got what looked to be a screen pass.
One play, they were over their average per game.
Exactly.
So that helped.
Yeah, we went 75 yards and they were averaging 71 on the ground going into that. And that loosened things up, although it took a little while for that to become evident, though.
Yeah, it was, and I think the Illinois offensive line is starting to develop a little more cohesion with Michael Heitz out at right tackle. That was kind of unsettled there for a few games, but I think that has helped Illinois a little bit in that regard. And you get the ball to Ferguson in space and just watch some of the moves he puts on, and you don't really see that out of a lot of running backs today, and it's a key strength for Ferguson in his run game.
I think that is one of the underappreciated things about him, and I know I mentioned it at the beginning of the year, but last year was against Miami, Ohio, where he just totally fooled a couple of defenders. On his long run at the beginning of the game, I mean, you might not notice it when you see him run for 75 yards, you see a couple of blocks, but there was a move he made right at about the 50 that just changed the direction of the defense that allowed Malik Turner to hold that block downfield. He really is a special player when it comes to the way he can move across.
Yeah, he's got that cut back, he's got the spin move when he needs it. He's just a very elusive guy.
Well, they're back in the win column in what hasn't been a September to remember for Eastern Illinois, but the Panthers are undefeated in league play. Baby steps. We'll get a report on win number 1 was a big one. And what's next for a little segment we like to call Inside the Panthers here on Inside the Illini, Big Ten football.
Inside the Illini, Big Ten college football.
Well, the 0-3 start was uncharted territory for Eastern Illinois players, especially considering they only lost twice all year in 2013. But the monkey's off their back. They've got win number 1. And to tell us how they got there, we go to Eastern as they file this Inside the Panthers report.
After 3 tough non-conference losses to start the season, Eastern Illinois opened up OVC play at O'Brien Field against Austin Peay last Saturday. The Panthers were without the services of junior tailback Shepard Little for the game, but there would be no shortage of yards rushing for EIU as they jumped all over the Governors in the first half.
We'll give through the middle, Duncan. No, Whitlow kept around right in. A lot of room. 40, 35, 30. Whitlow down the sideline. 20, 15, upended at the 14-yard line. A lot of time. Throws it right flat. Hits Duncan at the 5. Get the first down. Goes for the goal line. Touchdown, Eastern Illinois. Steps up, gunning it deep, down the hash mark, right for Drake. He's got it at the 25. Second down and 6 at the 7. And a handoff to Lyra, heading right, finds a hole at the 5, and's got an easy walk-in touchdown. Panthers have it at the Austin Peay 13, 1st and 10. Whitlow, handoff to Lyra, left sweep at the 15, at the 10, at the 5. It's a touchdown for Jimmy Lyra.
Up 35-7, EIU did not let up on both sides of the ball as they shut out the Govs in the second half, go on to win their OVC opener 63-7. In the victory, the Panthers tied a single-game team rushing record with 413 yards on the ground.
We asked them to go be physical, and they did. And we asked them to go out and really run the football the way we knew that we felt like we could. And you know, we went with Jalen Whitlow as our starter and went through the basically the first 2.5 quarters with him, and he was able to do what we hoped that he would.
Yeah, I mean, I just tried to execute the plays that were called, and you know, had some running lanes, so took them a couple times and got some yards. But I gotta give all the credit to the O-line. I mean, the running lanes were because of those guys, you know, clearing it out. You know, those guys played a great game.
EIU steps back out of conference once more today as they travel to Ohio, out of the Mid-American Conference. The Panthers and Bobcats will be meeting for the very first time.
We can't get too low on those weeks, but we also can't get too high in the fact that we beat a conference opponent in Austin Peay. And, you know, we were expected to win that game, and we should be. And so now we go play Ohio on the road, and, you know, we'll be an underdog in that game, but that doesn't mean that we can't go down there and win.
Kickoff is set for 1 p.m. today in Athens, Ohio. The game can be seen on ESPN3. Reporting on the Eastern Illinois Panthers for Inside the Illini, I'm Brad Kupiak of WEIU.
That game kicks off at Ohio at 1 o'clock. Well, up next, we make our college football picks and some more impact from former Illini on NFL fields in Week 3 of the pro season. We check in on those guys next.
Inside the Illini, Big Ten college football.
Welcome back now. Time for our weekly pick'em. Each week we're picking some of our favorite games, some of the matchups that are close. We will give you a winner. And as we take a look at the standings, I took a couple of gambles on upsets of Big Ten teams. I got one of them right, so we ended up going 50-50 with each of our picks. Standings change a little bit. Matt and I are at 6-4. Steve sitting at 4-6. You can make that all up today.
I can.
And I have a feeling we're going to differ on some opinions on this one. So let's start with our first game, Missouri against number 13, South Carolina. Is Missouri going to do what Indiana did to them, come off a bad loss and get a big win?
Let me think about it. No. South Carolina.
Took some deep thought.
I'm going to stick with Steve and pick the Gamecocks. The old ball coach will easily beat the Tigers today.
I agree with you guys. I'm going ahead and pick South Carolina. Just been too good this season. I know they had an early season loss, but Missouri, after they struggled against Indiana at home, I can't pick them to win a ranked game against an SEC team. Our second game here, number 16 Stanford against Washington. We just saw this Washington team play a couple of weeks ago. What do you think of this matchup at Husky Stadium?
I kind of like the fact that it's at Husky Stadium for the Washington Huskies. I'm going to go with the home team there. I think the home field advantage will be big.
I think if this was in Silicon Valley, I'd go with the Cardinal, but instead it's in Seattle. I'm going to go with Washington.
I think Washington has been playing with fire a little bit. They've avoided some tough losses. I mean, they were trailing Georgia State 14-0 at halftime. Playing with fire, I think they're finally going to get burned. I'm picking Stanford in this one.
That doesn't have anything to do with you being a Washington
No,
State
not
grad.
at all.
Not at all, right? No.
Go Cardinal. All right. Last game we're picking, Maryland at Indiana. Really, probably of all the Big Ten matchups, the most intriguing to me because I just don't know about Indiana, and I just don't know how Maryland fits in the Big Ten. What do you think, Steve?
I don't know about Indiana either, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt coming off the big win, playing at home. I'm going to go with the Hoosiers there.
I'm not buying what the Hoosiers have so far. I think Maryland and former Illinois offensive coordinator Mike Locksley get it done today in Bloomington.
I think normally I would pick a team coming off of a road win at a Big Ten or at an SEC stadium, but I'm not feeling normal today. I'm going to go ahead and pick Maryland. I still think they're the better team. I'm just confused about exactly what Indiana is. Well, we'll check in on those picks next week. We'll update our standings a little bit different. That's the way I like to see it. The NFL gets our attention for many reasons. We have our teams, and many of us also have our fantasy teams, and we get to track the former Illini now getting their shots in the NFL. We now turn to Elise Menaker for a new Illini and the Pros report.
Thanks, Matt. And Matt, I'm sure you're still on cloud 9 or 12, depending on how you look at it, after your Seahawks win in that Super Bowl rematch against the Broncos. But we have other games to get to and former Illini to talk about in Week 3. And I start with the Saints, Pierre Thomas, who had one of this week's most notable performances. Thomas and the Saints taking on the Minnesota Vikings Sunday. The running back had 30 rush yards, 21 reception yards, and this leaping touchdown.
Saints touchdown.
After the game, Thomas says his performance was just part of him doing what's expected.
Kyrie and myself, we just hit the holes like we were supposed to. I mean, we were just doing our job, and, our big guys allowed us to do that.
Saints would win 20-9. The Chargers' Corey Liuget had a great game Sunday with a season-high 6 tackles, 5 of which were solo, and the defensive end also with a forced fumble in the 22-10 victory against the Bills.
Touchdown, San Diego.
In a Monday night game against Da Bears, Jets' Jeff Cumberland tallying 3 catches for 18 yards. Quarterback Geno Smith on how his tight ends took advantage of the matchup against the Bears linebackers.
They were getting open. We knew they'd have some matchups on linebackers, and we expected those guys to win, and for the most part they did. Jeff, Jace, Zach, they all got in and did their jobs.
Jets would lose, though, at home 27-19.
Intercepted by Fuller.
The Houston Texans and Whitney Merciless lose to the New York Giants, but Merciless himself winning. The linebacker with a season-high 5 tackles. The Jaguars with a not-so-surprising loss to the Colts as they fall 44-17.
Touchdown, Colts.
But Alan Ball one-upping last week's total of 4 tackles to make it 5 this week. On the flip side of that, Colts' Vontae Davis had 2 solo tackles. And some firsts getting taken care of in Week 3. 49ers wide receiver Brandon Lloyd getting on the stat sheet with his first catch of the season, good for 5 yards. And Atlanta Falcons guard John Asamoah in a Thursday night matchup, he tallied his first tackle of the season against the Buccaneers.
To the end zone.
Also in that Thursday night game, and worth mentioning, Bucs defensive tackle Akeem Spence, who had 3 tackles, and it was a close game between the Raiders and Tavon Wilson and the Patriots. The defensive back had 1 tackle. That'll do it for this week's Illini and the Pros. I'm Elise Menaker.
Thank you, Elise. Now it's time to get ready for the game. It feels like we were just there. The Illini opened the Big Ten season at Nebraska for the 2nd year in a row. Bo Pelini's crew coming off a win against Miami. But it hasn't been a rosy start to the season for the Huskers. Never feels like it is, does it? We'll talk about their start and the major matchup problem that's lining up for Nebraska against Illinois next.
Inside the Illini, Big Ten college football.
Illinois versus Nebraska in Lincoln. That sentence brings forth a lot of memories of this young man. Amir Abdullah rushing for a career-high 225 yards against Illinois at the time. Well, he's back, and by all accounts, he's better in 2014. And there's little doubt that as Amir goes, Nebraska goes in this matchup with Illinois. Amir
Abdullah out of the backfield. Can he?
There.
Amir Abdullah.
Everywhere.
10-yard touchdown run by one of the very best in all of college football.
Indeed, the Huskers' success relies heavily on their senior running back.
I said he's definitely one of the better backs that I've seen in a while.
Since last season, Nebraska is 1-2 when Abdullah doesn't reach 100 yards. The lone win coming this season against McNeese State when the Huskers avoided overtime thanks to this Abdullah reception.
We knew last year when we played him, we thought he had a chance to be really good. He lived up to all the hype, and he's definitely picked up where he left off last week. So just a tremendous back, great vision. He plays bigger than, his stature.
Since he ran for a career best against Illinois, he's topped it twice, averaging 142 yards per game. Illinois will also have to deal with the growth of quarterback Tommy Armstrong Jr., a dual threat who's still working out some kinks with his arm. He's only attempted 25 passes 4 times in his young career, and in those games, never cracked 52% accuracy. Still, his 354 rushing yards are more than that of any Illinois running back, far more than a game manager, according to Illinois head coach Tim Beckman.
He doesn't run out of bounds. He's going to stick his shoulder down and try to run over you. And you can see his leadership capabilities that he has as a player.
It's going to feel like we talked about him the entire show, but he really deserves that much coverage and he deserves that much attention from the Illinois defense. Amir Abdullah, how big of a game maker, game changer is he, Steve?
Might be the best in the Big Ten, and certainly one of the best in the country. I think he's got to work his way into, or has worked his way into, the Heisman Trophy talk. He had that big game last week, 229 yards against Miami on national television, and he's the Big Ten Player of the Week, and well-deserved, I think.
Yeah, he's Nebraska's all-purpose or leader in all-purpose yards, and if he has a monster game tonight, which he very well could against Illinois' suspect defense, he could pass him on Green for second all-time on Nebraska school history. He'd need 269 yards to do that, but that's very capable with the talent he has. And it's not just Abdullah, though. I know he gets all the praise and the headlines, too, but Nebraska's got some very good wideouts, too, in Kenny Bell and Jordan Westerkamp, a familiar name to some Illinois fans. His father, Bob, played at Illinois. He was an all-stater at Montini up in Lombard, and Bell made a spectacular one-handed touchdown catch last year against Illinois. So those are some options that Illinois is going to have to concern themselves with.
I love the Heisman campaign they're putting together at Nebraska. I've seen them go out, but they're an 8-pack of Abdullah batteries from Nebraska. We'll have to pull up a picture of that. I haven't got them yet. I want to see those things. They're pretty awesome. I love when schools get behind their players as well. He is in the Heisman conversation, absolutely, and he's been about the most consistent back the last couple of years. We talk about the running game, and it's funny to look at Tommy Armstrong's numbers, the fact that he has more rushing yards than any Illinois back. This is a team that really runs the ball well, even with their dual-threat quarterback.
Yeah, Armstrong, the quarterback, he's second in the Big Ten total offense, and as you mentioned, 354 yards rushing, almost 900 yards passing, a dual-threat guy. Tommy Armstrong is who we're talking about, but Amir Abdullah talked about him this week, saying how much better he is because he is that dual-threat guy, and he can do it on the ground.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't know what Armstrong was about last year at this time. He was making his first career start against Illinois. Everyone was talking about Taylor Martinez and what he can do, but I think Armstrong gives him a better option in the passing game, too. He can run the ball, but I feel his passing's kind of undervalued at times by people, and with some of the wideouts that Nebraska has, it doesn't have to, be perfectly thrown balls all the time to them, but he's definitely improved in this last year at all.
Last year, this game came after another 3-1 start, and it was that back down to earth game. Illinois couldn't get anything going in the first half. We couldn't convert our opportunities. We couldn't convert on turnovers. We couldn't stop the run. What can they do differently? Do you think they could have learned anything, or is it not about scheme? It's just about getting punched in the face?
You have to beat Nebraska. I mean, there's nothing they've learned from last year that's going to help them necessarily this year. That they need to improve on their missed tackles. They need to just make plays tonight. I mean, it's a big time atmosphere, and they can't let that environment really overwhelm them at all.
And I think that's big because national television, it'll be the 337th consecutive sellout at Memorial Stadium. That is just one of the great atmospheres in college football, and I think that could be overwhelming to a lot of the young guys early, at least.
And the sellout's about 92,000, and they're stacked right on top of you. That's quite the atmosphere. Glad we get to experience it 2 years in a row, though I bet the Illini wish They could play a home game against the Huskers sometime. Well, that does it for us here on Inside the Illini Big Ten Football. We'll be back in our normal slot, 10 a.m. in our normal spot on WAND next week as Illinois gets set to host Purdue. Maybe we'll get a win tonight. We'll be talking about the 4-1 Illini. Let's shock the world. Catch the highlights and reaction of tonight's game here. Get your coverage from Sports Talk 1400 as well as the Champaign News-Gazette. We will see you back here next week.
Thank you for watching Inside the Illini Big Ten College Football. Brought to you by Illini HQ, the News-Gazette, News Talk 1400 WDWS, and WAND.